Erica and Sharon are sisters who began their grief journey in 2006 when Erica's 10-year-old son Austin drowned. Together, they participated in a grief education program, were so moved by this experience, they studied and became specialists so they could help the brokenhearted find recovery. In 2015, tragedy struck their family once again when Erica's oldest son Donovan was killed in a motorcycle accident. Erica and Sharon are committed to sharing their experiences of love, loss, and healing through this podcast. Now your grief specialists, Sharon and Erica.
You are listening to Healing Starts with the Heart podcast with Sharon and Erica. Welcome, friends, to Healing Starts with the Heart, where it's all about you, the griever, and your broken heart, and how to move beyond your pain. Here we are, your grief recovery specialists, Sharon Brubaker and Erica Honore.
Hey, what a great intro, Erica. Thank you. We should tell all of our friends that we're sisters. And that
I guess we can claim that.
We can claim that. And that I'm the older, wiser sister. You always leave that out of the intro.
And I'm the younger, beautiful sister.
If you're listening to our podcast today, there's a huge probability that your heart may be broken. It could be from a grief either recent or long ago, or it could be from the breakup of a romantic relationship. Or it could be from a feeling that your life is just not as happy or fulfilling as you'd like it to be. Regardless of the cause of your broken heart, you know how you feel, and it probably isn't good. We're not here to tell you how you feel because you already know. At best we can tell you.
It's so important because we just only can identify with you because we know how it felt when we really suffered our experiences and had our hearts broken. And it really wasn't good. It did not feel good. And it kind of took us a long time to start picking up our pieces and getting us back where we needed to be. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We're talking about New Year, Same Pain, and this is our episode number 2.
Yes, it's part 2 of our New Year, Same Pain, which we were doing. We did part 1 of it. But what we were trying to share, sorry about that, guys. What we were trying to share is that we come into the new year, we've experienced a lot of loss, and we look at this whole new year in front of us, 365 days, and it's so daunting, and we're wondering how we're going to get through it, right? How we're absolutely going to make it through, and it seems so big, and that's kind of where we left off. We left off with what exactly grief is, what it's about, and how it affects us on a daily basis. Erica and I have, if you know anything about our story, we came into grief recovery in 2006, when we tragically lost her 10-year-old nephew, Austin. When I went to the house...
It's your nephew, my son.
I'm sorry. You got to take that out, Furman. We came into grief recovery, tragically, when we lost Erica's 10-year-old son, my nephew, Austin. And it was the day that I went to the house and I knocked on the door to tell her that Austin had drowned, that I knew we were completely ill-prepared to deal with grief and loss. And that started our journey, Erica. That started our journey to recovery.
Absolutely. Once we were introduced to grief recovery, our experience was so profound. I remember you and I talking about it the next day, and it was like, we have to tell everyone, like we have to get involved in this, because it really does free you from feeling like you're trapped in that box of pain. And we just wanted to get the word out. So you and I set on a journey to become certified grief recovery specialists, to get that word out and help others deal with their pain.
100%. How would some of our friends know if they are in their relationship to grief is incomplete? Their hearts are broken. That's where I want to start today. How do we know that we are absolutely incomplete and broken?
I would say one of the telltale signs of that is, and you and I have had shared this experience, where you meet someone and we talk about being grief recovery specialists, and that person will start talking about an event either from their childhood or, from young adulthood, and they're, an aged person, but they're crying as though that experience just happened yesterday. Yeah. That is one of the telltale signs that you're dealing with unresolved grief. Because if you cannot share memories from that experience without breaking down, then there's still something going on there.
And I think it's hard for our friends to understand that you and I can talk about Austin. We share stories about him. We share fond memories about him. Sometimes we absolutely still shed tears when we're talking about him, but that brokenness in our heart, that knife that's been stabbed in our heart, is definitely not there any longer. And what you were talking about, it's like we get clients that come that can't even talk about what reason they came to the office in the first place because it's so deep.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll come and they'll present with one issue that is very, very surface and superficial. And after doing the work and sitting with them and letting them, creating the safe space for them, then they drop these bombshells of really tragic, traumatic events that happen to them that kind of knock our socks off. And we're like, well, where did this come from? Right. And then that's when the real work and the real healing begins.
What happens if fond memories turn painful when you think of them? What happens when you think about that moment? It could be anything. It could be just sitting with your cat on your lap, but that cat is no longer in your family anymore. What happens when those fond memories turn painful and you just start crying? What is that telling the griever?
Well, I think that's a signal to the griever that there's some work to do there, that relationship with the little kitty or, whatever experience you've had in your life, it needs some work to be done. You can't just keep stuffing it, because that's the thing. It's like, someone will start talking to you and sharing something starts out seemingly positive with a smile on their face. And next thing you know, these tears come out of nowhere. And you're, as the person on the other end of the conversation, you're looking at them thinking, but I thought you were happy with this. But all of a sudden these tears come out. So I would have to say the tears, and not tears of joy. You can see they're tears of pain and tears of sadness. That's signifying something else is going on there.
One of the things that you and I often teach about, and I'm going to sidetrack here, is tears. Because tears may or may not be a sign of grief and loss. And a lot of times my grievers will tell me, but I cried. I cried for 3 months. And what I explain to them is that tears just are tears. Tears are sometimes a way to release the pressure. They're a way to release the pain, but they're not necessarily a sign of grieving or recovery. And sometimes you could be totally crying or not crying, but you're still grieving.
And that's true, because I'm not a crier. So I often get, and it's my own thing that I carry with me, that I'm giving the wrong message because I talk about Austin without tears. Yeah. And, I can relay the story. I do it all without tears. And I feel like I'm giving the impression that, I don't know, there's something wrong with me, like I'm robotic or something. But yeah, I just don't cry. I don't know why. It's just always been. And I think you and I have talked about that initially when I said, what's going to happen when I get on Oprah and I can't cry? But that doesn't mean that my heart's still not broken, that I don't miss that little boy every single day. Tears are not part of my grief makeup. I don't know.
100%. And I want to tell you also that I'm not a crier either. There have definitely been moments where I've absolutely cried, but I remember being shopping for the clothes that I needed for Austin's funeral and walking around Macy's thinking, I'm not crying, but my heart is so broken, but I'm buying clothes for my nephew's funeral. So we also need to make sure that grievers understand that just because they're crying doesn't mean that they're processing the grief. Just because they're not crying doesn't mean that they're processing the grief. So that they need to be okay with that aspect of it. I think what happens, Erica, because we're talking about Austin a lot, but what a lot of our friends who are just tuning in for the first time don't realize is that 3 years ago, your second son, Donovan, was killed in a motorcycle accident. And Donovan was 21, and so you lost two boys.
Yes. And after the loss of Donovan, I didn't think I was going to come back from that. And when I lost Donovan, I not only lost my son, but because he was older, Austin was 10 when he died, Donovan was almost 21, I lost a friend. He and I had developed a friendship in addition to me being his mom. We talked every day, we text every day. We had a bunch of inside jokes. So the grief was almost like twofold. I was grieving a child and grieving the loss of a good friend. And I didn't think I was going to make it back. I really thought that was it for me.
When I tell that story, I always follow it with this statement, is that I'm not here to say we have the worst story in the world. I've lost both of my nephews. We're not here to share that. What we're here to share with you is that without grief recovery, I don't think you would have found a way back. Without the tools of grief recovery, even though it was longer, it was deeper, it was so different, I don't know that we would have had the path to make it absolutely back. But
absolutely, I agree 1,000%. After when I initially meet a client and I give them, my story, and I say, I know that you have reservations about participating because it is a very scary journey to do this, but I need you to know I am a walking billboard for this program. Without this program in my life, I would not be where I am. I would even think I'd be a functioning human in society right now.
Oh yeah, 100%. But I want to step back again. I'm moving past the slide, but that conversation that you and I had about people, I think that our supporting staff, and I call that all the people around us in society that's all around us, would expect that you would be a babbling idiot or crying all the time, and that was what the point you were trying to make.
To the max.
Exactly. Like how does she walk on a stage and even talk about this without completely falling apart? And that's where I think is part of recovery. That's your recovery.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things, when I end one of my presentations, I say, what does recovery look like? And then I say, it looks like me.
Yeah.
I get up every day. I enjoy my relationships with my husband, with my 2 remaining children, with my, my siblings, with my mom. I continue to live a genuine life every single day.
That is so cool. That's so cool. Hey, I just want to quickly talk about this. What if we're only focusing on the positive aspects of a relationship? Could that be a grieving experience?
And that's so easy to do, because when you think about a 10-year-old like Austin passing away, or babies, or mothers who miscarry, and you're just, how can you think of one negative about a baby, who passed away from, SIDS or what have you? There has to be, no one is perfect. The pregnancy is not perfect. You have morning sickness, you have heartburn, your swollen ankles, there's some negative aspects to that experience that you have to factor in order to see a fully balanced picture of any relationship. There's positive and negatives. So if you try to make it all one-sided, it's just really going to be hard for you to become complete with that relationship, because then you feel like that person is not deserving of, or situation is not deserving of any work because they're so angelic. How do I, grieve this relationship?
And what that is, Erica, what I'm really trying to get through here, which I think that was a great example of it, is that sometimes what our griever and friends do is they don't want to look at the bad, or they don't want to look at the things that really hurt, and so they only want to stay in the joy and the peace and the good parts of the relationship, or they only want to think of that person, don't think ill will of the dead, and they only want to think of positive aspects, and they think that helps with their grief. But you and I know from our experiences that's not true.
Because you have to, like I said, there's balance in every relationship. But the part that, even making the first phone call, someone calling you for the first time, calling me for the first time, showing up to the first meeting, it's scary stuff. It is scary stuff to start peeling back those layers and start dealing with some of those painful things. And it takes a lot of courage for someone to do that. But it is very hard to do, because grief is painful. And who wants to deal in pain? That's why I'm like, you and I joke about this. Why do we do this work again?
Yeah, exactly. We live in the pain. Hey, my friends, 15 minutes is way too short. That's what I have to say. Erica and I have so much to share with you. So please continue to listen to our show. It's all about your broken heart and how to mend beyond that. You can reach me, Sharon Brubaker, at SharonBrubaker.com. My phone number is 661-212-0720, and we can always be reached at Healing Starts with the Heart. Where can they find you, Erica?
They can find me at Erica Honore, grmethod@gmail.com or 818-974-1124. Thank you so much for giving us your time and listening to our stories. We really appreciate it.
We'll see you next week, guys, where we talk about processing the pain. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.